Thank you, James, for coming here.
Yes,
And everyone, thank you all for arriving this morning. This wonderful talk. And it was such a pleasure to get to meet you that one day at Dell State University, the last day of your father's show, and also with Shamika. And from there, we approached Jamie and Shamika, said we need to do this down here.
Yeah.
And this is the fruit of it. And it was such a great time. It was such a privilege to meet your father. And unfortunately, of course, you know, with his passing, it kind of put a damper on the show, but we went forward with it anyway. So Jamie, thank you for doing this talk and take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Jamie Loper. I'm the son of Edward Loper Jr., grandson of Edward Loper Sr. With me today will be Shamika Jones, who's curating. Right. So this has really been a very interesting intersection for me in the Loper story. This is the first time I'm speaking without my father here. Usually we'd work like peanut butter and jelly. I'd run my mouth and then just take over and, you know, and tell those stories. And I was really quite comfortable in that role, in the business end of that. Really comfortable there, and that's something that I had been doing. That was my entire life. I liked being next to him while he told his story. I wrote those things down. Not being an artist myself, I paid attention somehow to everything that my father was teaching. The colors, the descriptions, the subjects that he was using. One of the things that was really impactful when we came down, I think just about over a year ago, to visit the Rehoboth Art League, is I knew nothing about the Rehoboth Art League. My grandfather had been here, and that was a language and a dialogue between my father and my grandfather that wasn't always clear. They weren't always on the same page, and they're father and son and so similar. Very, very different. So we were coming down here, and I said, Dad, we've never really shown anything in Rehoboth. Why is that? He's like, well, I was down here in the 50s and 60s, you know, hanging out, and I wasn't welcome here. You know, I was told to get my black you-know-what out of here, and you're not welcome here. So in that instant, this ride down here became so impactful because it was, well, this is our first time showing here. These are new eyes. These are new ideas. These are new perspectives. So this whole intersection has become something that I was really looking forward to, and now has become a new transition in that story. So without my father, it's now my job to tell everything that I know as I lived it, in his words, the way that he did it, and that's what brings me great pride and great honor that I was paying attention to really know what he was talking about. So when we were putting together this show, we came to this beautiful campus. We realized that this is definitely a maritime event. This was gorgeous. We were not in the middle of the city, we were near water. And this water element, you can see, is something that's been with my dad his entire life. This element of water, the movement, how it moves through cities, what it meant to him as a child is really where so much of this begins. So it was really quite exciting when we were putting together these images and what kind of ideas around water can we have, the movement, different parts up and down the East Coast. So it was really a very, very exciting selection of paintings. And being my father, it's always important that he shows where he has come from, his neighborhoods, exactly where he came from. Being an artist, my grandfather as well, that were self-made, it was very important to show where they have come from. So we have images like the firehouse. There's a gorgeous image back here I'll draw your attention to in a little bit of a bird's eye view that my father did of his neighborhood that he grew up in, never having been a bird. So that tells you a lot about his perspective and how he was able to see the world and see these angles and see these, you know, and bring all these juicy colors. And these things, by the way, are all a complete mystery to me. I did not get this. That gene did not come to me. I'm in athletics, I'm skating, I'm doing my thing, but there is none of that. And you know where home is? I'm sorry, Wilmington, Delaware. Sorry, yes, Wilmington, Delaware. So this is, yeah, all from Wilmington, Delaware, senior and junior. The story starts from Wilmington, Delaware. So, and at no point was it suggested that I become an artist. Even though this is the walls in the living room and every room, at no point, Jamie, will you be required to paint. You stay there and you do your things and climb trees and be a kid. We'll be over here painting, and by the way, don't touch anything. So from a very early age, you know, I knew that my grandfather and my father were doing things that were really, really special. You know, I didn't even understand compliments, but the way that people would carry on about these paintings and discuss these things, how they really meant to them. You know, I'd see these as an image, but they really meant something to these people. Something, a color, a certain perspective really connected with them, and that was very, very interesting for me as a kid to see that my dad and my father, my grandfather, were creating things that could pull people on that level. So, as I mentioned, my father, his connection to his memory is something that is just absolutely so incredible. I'll draw your attention to this fisherwoman painting here. And this one here, now my dad could recall things from his childhood in exact. This picture here, I'm just gonna bounce around here, so I'm really excited about today, and a little bit anxious, you know, but very, very happy to be able to share this off. In some of these pictures here, the memory that he has is, he drew this neighborhood, and we have matched that same image up with the 1940 census. He could tell me what kids lived in every house, how many kids, where they were from, which way they would walk out of their house and head to school, which ones gave him a hard time, which ones were friends. So this memory is absolutely incredible, and this fisherwoman painting is something that he did out of a memory. He was downstate hunting in the 60s, and he came across women that were working in a boat, and just that idea, it came out of nowhere, and it was so impactful that he had to get that painting out. Both this story and the image started in the same day. We were out just having a good day, and he's like, oh, I have this image. And when my dad wanted to do something, it had to come out right away. He needed that canvas, he needed me to get these colors and let me get it started. He couldn't think about it, he couldn't ponder it, it had to absolutely spill out. So paintings, several of these paintings were produced in a few hours. I mean, his ability to work like that feverishly and just go through there was really something. And when he was out on the street working like this, there'd be people crowded around him watching not only the image, but how quickly he was working through it and how he could talk to people. Yep, well, I'm working right here, it's right there, you know, and feverishly working there. So it was just something that was so misunderstood by me. I would look at him just like, you are amazing. You are amazing, and in no way can I connect to the talent that you have. You're telling me that you see all these different colors in a white wall, and I don't see those yet. Over time, I have learned to see those. But the fact that that came from a self-taught idea is what makes that so, so impactful. I have, a series of images, as I mentioned. We went with maritime, things that were happening around water. We have Sting Like a Bee. Now, when we were putting together this selection of works, my father, again, feels very strongly about the images that go in here, and he recognized that Butch Lewis, fight promoter, used to live here, so we had to have a boxing, like these things. It doesn't matter where in the time frame this works, he connects with a certain idea and understanding, and then he tells me what kind of images he wants in there. So that's what made this particular exhibition so exciting, that we have water outside. We have that movement right there. So the selection of paintings was a lot of fun. I mean, as I mentioned, this is what I do. This is what I do. I protect these paintings with everything I have. There's no kids, there's no little fuzzy animals in my home, because these are more precious than that idea. And I'm here today as I am because this is where life has put me, in order to make sure that that is understood and that these works can go on and be shared with the world. And I'm the generation, the person that has to push those to the next level. I don't have a brush in my hand, but I do have a very powerful idea, and I want to share that with you, because that's very important. My father's not here to share that voice. And at this point, I would sit over here very calmly with a sip of water while he put on a fantastic show for you, with all the sound effects and big arms and whoosh, and where all those things go. And that's part of that incredible show. So even coming down here today, I could feel it building in my stomach that this was a significant turnover and a change. So it's really big, and again, it makes today so incredibly special. Those of you that are here, it's like this is it. This isn't going to happen again. I won't have a second speech after losing my father. I won't have that again. Okay? So as I look at you today, that's what I impress upon you. That this is me. This is what I do, and I am all about this work. These works here, okay, I want to go to the highest possible level. okay, to be in the very best walls and the very best air. And I believe that all those images, and especially where they came from, a father and son duo from Wilmington, Delaware, that created all of this, and it was just something really special. And it gets bigger and bigger every time I do this. And from here, it will continue to get bigger. This is something, again, I have to move forward without my father. So it really, now I have that weight on both shoulders. And I have wide shoulders that can handle that as my father did. I can handle that pressure, and I'm proud to handle that and push this work forward. So this, this facility, I mean, this is more than what I dreamed. This is more than what I dreamed. I really wish my dad could be here today, just because of the stories that he shared with me when we came down here the first time. How these things completely turn over. You're not invited here 1 minute. You're not even welcome in this part of the state. We don't even know about this. And the next minute we're being celebrated like this here. So it's the most beautiful thing. It's the most beautiful thing. For me, I can't tell you what that does, and I can't even describe what that would have done for my dad. But I'm very, very, very happy that I can voice those types of things. So I have a lot more to share, but right now I'm gonna turn it over to Shamika. Just to discuss like some of this selection. Work with my dad, it's pretty straightforward, and he's a tough guy. He's not an easy guy to work with. So he had to take a couple different perspectives, we had a couple conversations. But Shamika quickly was the individual that took the time to listen to all of my dad's stories. The good, the bad, she took that time to actually recognize what kind of artist he was and what kind of person he was and what he wanted, really what he wanted to accomplish. So that made Shamika an incredible extension of my desire, but someone that knows the art world and can, work with us in a good way. So Shamika's been a wonderful addition to this idea, and yeah,
Well, thank you all for coming today. I guess our journey started about 3 years ago, and I was an intern at the Bigs, and I came across seniors work, and I reached out to Jamie, and it was like, no, this is actually, senior, because I thought it was junior. And I wanted to immediately connect with them both, and I decided to do a studio visit and just really comb through Mr. Loper's history and the legacy of the Lopers at that. And then that kind of just spilled over into, can I do an exhibition? And they were both on board, and from there it was really just understanding Mr. Loper's perspective and his urge to paint nonstop, even at that age. He was just every day chipping away at new works. So this collection is special because he had a hand in selecting each piece and how he wanted this exhibition to come together. And I thought it was perfect because it showed his journey along the coast as well as in the city, and each piece has a serene element to it. So regardless if you're by the water or really in the city, you can get a peaceful element to each location. And I thought that spoke volume to his character, that he saw beauty no matter what or no matter where. And like the fight, it's just a beautiful flow. It just draws your eyes in. And when you stop and look at each piece, it's just layers upon layers upon layers. And he had so many layers to him. Very funny, but very proud of who he was. Like he knew who he was and his perspective. So it was very important to me to just honor that in any way possible. So yeah, that was just my significant part in it, and just really telling the story. And then of course, Nick, he put his special sauce to it and just had them flow perfectly. Like each piece tells a story, and you stop in front of each one like, well, what was it like? The day, the weather, and you're just drawn to it. So that was just our collaboration, and it's been an honor working with him and working with Jamie and just driving that force forward and sharing it with you all. So deep thank yous.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So I guess I'll keep this to the front here, but I'd just like to kind of go through a couple of the paintings and just.
Jamie, would it be easy if I take some, if I took the portrait off, and if you want to talk about a special piece, it could hang it right in the center?
If you'd like.
So,
Sure,
if
sure.
everyone out there, you'd like to switch around?
Can we start with the bird's eye view?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How much a part of this collection is it?
I'm sorry?
How much of, how many pictures do you have?
More. I mean, there's a big collection. You know, I mentioned my dad moved emotionally, so there were things that weren't quite finished, things that he picked on over several years, going back and refined. There's quite a large collection, and through the years we've kind of sorted out which ones are exhibition, most complete and really express what he wanted. So, but there's more. Yes, there's certainly more paintings. Yeah, but these are, I mean, there's some real beauties here today. Yeah, so this is a sketch that my dad did. My dad was always sketching. In a restaurant, he'd grab a pen, woo, and then the waitress would want the, like, can I have this when you're done? He'd just draw beautiful things all over the place. So this sketch he did, I would say 20 plus years ago. The sketch actually is about, it's like 10 by 12. It's actually really small, and when Dad's eyes were sharp, he was able to go in here and do all these. Now this is his neighborhood, childhood neighborhood. In case you're wondering, I-95 is over here. Okay, so this is his little neighborhood of Wilmington, Pennsylvania Railroad. And he drew this from a bird's eye view, as I mentioned, never having been a bird, never having flown over his neighborhood. And it was a rooftop experience in the 50s, I believe, when they got their first TV. They had to go run the wire way up, and he was up on top of the roof. And he looked and he was able to see how streets came from here and here and how things got big and small as they went away. So he was opened up to perspective, directions, phone lines, telephone lines, things like that. So he drew this painting, or did this drawing, and it's from that particular time period. Like the bridge, 11th Street Bridge, has just been taken out. So this is from a time period in the 40s. Right? So it's really interesting that he was able to capture that idea, know his neighborhood so well that you can draw a bird's eye view of it and have it spot on. Okay? And as I mentioned, knowing the neighbors, knowing how everything worked within here. And within this picture, we have 12th Street Firehouse. Okay? 12th Street Firehouse is located right here, just underneath. And this painting will be residing here at the Rehoboth Art League, and it is absolutely gorgeous, and I was hoping to keep it forever, but I can't do that because I need to share with the world. And if you can just gaze upon this painting for a few minutes, you notice that it has a different character than the rest of the paintings in this room. It almost has like a cartoon type character, a little bit rounded, the colors, what I'll add to that painting is I picked out the frame. I went over, I stood under that bridge, I scratched that metal there, I said, And when I looked at a whole bunch of frames, I said, I'll do it. Yeah. My dad didn't care at all for frames. He was like, don't need frames at all. But that's the little bit, I wanted to sweeten it up and put a nice little trim on it. So we had some good arguments over that. But, the fact that my dad was so connected to this neighborhood, the people that came out of there, was really something that was unique. We'd be heading across town and he would intentionally go right through there. By the way, here is Edward Loper Sr. way there. So it's a nice little area that's dedicated to them. So this area will always remain incredibly special to me. And I do drive through there just because it's so deeply connected. And for my father to take me through there his entire life really was something that humbled me and kept me like a small town person. As a professional ice skater, I ice skate professionally. Yeah. I've traveled the entire world. I skated with Disney for 18 years. I performed in 50 different countries, traveled in 70. But when I come back to here, it brings me all back to Apple, where it started. The earliest stories that I remember. And my dad would take me over here in the middle of the day, and there was some a couple nightclubs and things like that. He knew all the owners. My dad had his fingers on the pulse of Wilmington. We'd go into place, and I was like, Mom would not want me here, Dad. Guys are smoking and gambling, and 9 o'clock in the morning. You know, and I'm sitting at the bar with a couple other strangers, and he's like, all right, let's get out of here. You know, and he's just talking to his guys, just running around and talking to his crew and moving through here. But I felt so safe with him. There's areas there now, I'm almost 50 years old. There's areas here I would not walk by myself. But if my 89-year-old dad was with me, I'd stroll down there fine. You know what I'm saying? That's just the way it is. So I so appreciate that he was connected to that neighborhood, and that it's never, as I go through here and I share these images, even though these are all over the place, I have to remain connected to where it all came from. Wilmington, Delaware. You know, I mean, it's there. You don't hear much about it on the news, but it's it's very significant. And again, these two artists coming from here is something that is, it's just big. It's so big, you know. And to say that, you look at the timeline and what's come from Wilmington in that area, there is truly nothing like it. So it brings me great pride. So yeah, this is a picture that is very dear, and we have photos and things like that to talk about family history, and this is an image that my dad did that is that same kind of family history. So very, very significant. Wonderful. Okay. Can I have Reading Terminal? Sure. Keep you busy there.
That's all right. I was always interested when your father would talk about these things when he painted them. He goes, wherever I put red, then I also had to put yellow somewhere. If I put yellow somewhere, I had to put green somewhere.
Sure. Here you go. Yeah, so a little bit of defining the difference between Loper Sr. and Loper Jr., okay? My grandfather, artist all the way through. You cut him, it's like, oh, art lessons still out. When I'd go there, hi, Grandpa. Here, El Greco. Sit down, read El Greco. Look at the drama in those skies. Do you see the drama in those skies? I didn't at the time, but you know what I did when I was in Madrid? I went out to Toledo and I looked at those and I was like, this is great. He was never there. He wasn't there, but I went there and I was like, wow, El Greco. This is something. And I did that in every museum I've been to around the world. I walked to the Louvre and I'm like, what if my grandfather's painting could be here? I wonder if my dad's painting has the right to be here. Right? I mean, it's a fair question. Okay. Reading Terminal in Philadelphia. So, 90s? I believe 90s. So this was one of those paintings. My dad, my grandfather artist all the way through. Always stories, everything. My dad, anything life could throw at you, and a talented artist. So he did woodworking. He was a big game hunter. He was in Arctic Circle hunting stuff with rack this big. And then he's back painting, and then he's going here. He's all over the place, very random. But the way that he could crank out a painting with is just like unlike anything I've ever seen before. So he did this painting in the winter with gloves on. He was wearing gloves. Look at the fine detail this guy gets with gloves on. And he didn't touch this painting after he finished it. So he did it in front of the Reading Terminal. The Reading Terminal has been completely refaced now. It doesn't have all that beautiful fine work. So this is an incredible painting. In my dreams, this goes to the Philadelphia Art Museum, someplace where that city can celebrate it as big as possible, unless one of you buy it, in which case, that'd be pretty cool. So, but this is one of those where it's like, ooh, and the selection's like, that's such a standout. Like, look at that. Like, look at this here. You know, and remember, this is a guy that's just like working just because he had nothing going on that day. Oh, I don't really feel like doing this. I'm going to shoot up the Philly and knock out a painting. What? Just knock out a painting? You know? So these things, and this kind of stuff would just spill out of him. Absolutely spill out. I looked at this painting for years, and I was like, oh, that's cool, Dad. You know, because he had so many paintings. And then again, as I get older, these things become so juicy and so detailed, especially when you have areas that don't exist anymore. You know, youth won't know what the Reading Terminal looks like unless they see beautiful paintings like this that really mean something to them. To see a photograph is one thing. To see what somebody actually captured on the day is something completely different. So, yeah, this is one here. And this actually wasn't even on our list originally when we put this in. This was like pickup day stuff. It was like, well, what about, all right, we got to. I stroll by this thing in my underwear 7 days a week, and you know what? It needs to be in front of people being shared, okay? Like, it's seen this from me so many times. Going to get my coffee in the morning. No, these things need to be shared, okay? I have my own private collection of paintings that were given to my mother that mean everything to me, since I don't have her as well, okay? So those stay with me, and every time I see them, I have a flood of stories, a flood of memories that come back to me. And that's incredibly precious. I can pick up my photo album and be like, all right, I remember this, but a single image like that, the painting of why she had it and what it is, really brings that to me. So I have, my own that mean everything to me. And the rest absolutely must be shared. So, the rest of my life is dedicated to sharing these, telling these stories, and really emphasizing what kind of men these artists were. These were, very serious individuals. And I've met different kinds of artists, but people are like, oh, I'm an artist, and then, well, I like to do this on the other time. So these guys weren't like that. We are artists, and that is it. Every day it is this. I put on my belt and I get ready, and I'm as an art teacher. I am this way as an instructor on X. If you have a chance to look at my Instagram, you'll see exactly how serious I am. I'm like, good. It's like, get that free leg back there. I said, get it back. And it's serious. I'm like, where did I get such a serious attitude? Well, I got it from my grandfather and my father. Were very serious individuals. Yeah, it's not painting, but their lessons were serious, their ideas were serious. And that has come to me too, because it's a message that I want to put out. It must be understood. And that was one of the great things about those stories that my dad and my grandfather tell. They were intense. They would hit you hard. You're sitting there with your mouth open. And then they have enough dignity to carry on. In those early years, some of the things that I went through in my life as a kid were just like, oh, I had a white mother and a black father. That was not cool when I was little. That was not cool where I was, okay? Come out, there's a brick in the car windshield. Nigga, leave that white girl alone. That's the way it was. That's 1974. I was born in 74. That's not that long ago, okay? So we had to come through some of those things. So for my grandfather and my dad to have paintings on the walls of major museums in this state is something incredible. That ugly comment, and 2 seconds later you're walking in. We've walked in exhibitions and be like, hi, can we help you? And my dad's like, oh, this is my exhibit. Oh, well, Mr. Loper, please. And it's like, get out of here. You should have paid us that respect the second we walked in the door. Plain and simple, So these things, this is something that drives. You can see how intense I am about these things, okay? Because I love these guys. I absolutely love them, and the lessons that they taught me were golden. And I know what I've gotten out of those lessons and those perspectives and how I see the world now. I can look at this wall and maybe see a few different colors. What color is this wall? What was the color you had here?
That's called Morocco.
Morocco. It's a beautiful color, right? But my grandfather would come over here and say, don't you see that? There's a little bit of here, and break down all these different colors that you see there. So when you look around the world, you don't just see a white wall and rich grays. You see all these different colors and perspectives and different ideas, and that's the beauty. Somebody can find this beautiful, and somebody else walk right by it, where other people might stand and look at that for an hour and completely, try to absorb that and take it in. And yes.
Because you're on the Philly painting, will you share your dad's story about his time at the Barnes Foundation?
Mm-hmm.
I love that one.
Sure. That's a good story, because the Barnes Foundation, that in itself was the biggest disruption between my father and grandfather. It's the most misunderstood thing ever. Now, my grandfather went to the Barnes Foundation. They were Violet DeMasia. And my father went there as well. But something about the conversation in the middle never linked up, so it was this thing that almost split the entire family up. But my dad's story with Violet DeMasia when he was there was he dropped me off at daycare, and he shot up to Philly. He was painting in the Italian market. And one of those random days, he had nothing going on, dumps me off, shoots right up to Philly. Painting there. He used to love the barrels, like from Rocky. They had all the baskets out there in the Italian market, and the trash cans are on fire, and the fruit's all stacked up. So he loved all those different dynamics and levels and all these crazy things. And he was painting. He got this painting done, and he shot out to the Barnes. They had, I can't even remember what type of meeting they had going on Thursdays out there. But he went out, and the painting was sitting in the car. And when he got out of the car, there were two individuals that walked by and happened to see that painting. So everyone went in, and they sat down with Violet DeMasia, who was this really interesting character. I have more research to do on her, but really interesting individual that had the bracelets, hundreds of bracelets, and was just like, oh. this incredible oracle of art. And she asked my father, she's like, I understand you have a painting in the car. Could you bring it in? So my dad looks around, it's like, okay, so two individuals escort him outside, they bring the painting in, and she proceeds to compliment this painting in several ways in front of this entire group. So this is, he's just absolutely being called out. An example where you didn't bring your own art in. Like, it wasn't a discussion about you bringing your work. So the fact that she had his work brought in was really something incredible. So she, made a couple compliments on something wonderful is going on in Delaware. Okay, you can put the painting back in the car. And this is a story that I heard probably every 6 months throughout my life, because it was something that was so significant. Like, to my dad, he didn't need that acknowledgement. If it was here or there, he was putting that painting up and he was proud of it. But something within that story, the fact that she ID'd him to bring his work forward and let's take a look at it, was something that really, in the timeline, motivated him to just really go forward with those things. And he had those things that were just kind of one-off. We'd go somewhere and every artist is this way and painting motif one. Dad's on the other side of the road, facing the other way, painting lobster traps. So just a very interesting what caught his eye, and these types of things. But yeah, the Barnes Foundation was something that was very, very significant for my father and my grandfather, but very misunderstood. And the misunderstanding part was at the end of these courses, they would have a picnic at the Barnes. And my grandfather went to it, but my dad didn't attend it, and he didn't see him there. So it was really a mess. It was really a mess. But again, it was just kind of showing the difference between these two. Same name, same color, completely different individuals. And throughout my life, I was kind of in the middle of what Dad was thinking and what my grandfather was thinking. They had very, very different ideas, but both genius in their own way. And in the future, I will be showcasing my father and my grandfather's work, just to kind of round that out and make that story. But for right now, since I worked so closely with my dad, and that was my guy. That was my guy. I mean, he was there for me, and I'm there for him. And so my focus is making sure that his name and his work is celebrated as broadly as possible. Do we have any questions? Any questions? Just kind of like, yes?
How's your grandfather's work different than your father's work?
My grandfather's work, same style, and even same subjects, okay? If I draw your attention back here, there's a picture of the Brandywine, probably a river that runs through Wilmington. My grandfather took his students down to the Brandywine. My dad took some students down to the Brandywine. Just a lovely area in Wilmington that's very French, a French feel to it. For me to describe that difference is, now again, remember my grandfather was artist all the way through. So it could take weeks getting something right. Whereas my dad worked emotionally. My dad was here, boom, and the grandfather was very, very slow. Smaller hit to the brush, and 1,000 more touches on the canvas. 1,000 more touches on the canvas. So when you look at it, you'll say, oh, these artists definitely know each other. They might live in the same house. But the work, at a certain degree, really takes on a much different look. And just to give you an idea, again, how serious my grandfather is, I had to buy my paintings from my grandfather, full price. He looked me in the eye and was like, I was like, really? He's like, oh yeah. I was like, oh. Writing a check, hands shaking all over the place. He's like, get it, boy, come on, Like there was no, like grandson, doesn't matter. If you wanted that, you were buying it. And I'm really, really glad that I bought that. That's in my collection. Nobody gave it to me. I bought it with my own money. And I show it off with great pride. It's something that I learned along the way is the pride of ownership. I have a house, I have a car, I have these things. To own a piece of art is really something quite special. It really is. It has a special place in life, it has a special place. You walk by it every day, and it's like, obviously that picture would have something in it that's spoken to you, something that says that same thing every day, something that you can look at and stare at and have it be so thought-provoking. Okay, I can sit in my living room and work out so many things just by looking at a color or a particular light that might inspire something, change my mood. So, it's really become something, as I mentioned, even now, I'm still like a mourning phase. My father passed in September. There's a lot to cover there. It's one thing just to handle his personal things, but then this art is something that I was connected to through him. So, it just gets very, very deep after a while. Would anyone like to hear me talk about any of the images? Any of the images?
Images?
Sure. Jazz band? Sure. So this one's good. Dad took a trip down to New Orleans, 2014. And this painting was great. This was done off of a photograph. My dad took a photograph of a band down there. And he came home, and actually, can we swing this one over?
Absolutely.
And this painting here, now, in the 70s, 80s, Dad could peel out a painting in like 2 or 3 hours. Like enormous, like 36 by 40 Brooklyn Bridge, blah, 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 take it, throw it in the car, take it home. And here, this painting, as I mentioned, he took a photograph of a band, he came home, and a couple years later, he set this picture out, and this painting absolutely spilled out of him. Spilled out of him. The way my dad would work is, he'd feverishly, have to get something out on canvas, and then he'd put it down the side and go into something else. So we have multiple pictures working on. This particular painting stayed on the canvas for maybe a week, and he just beat this thing up all the way in. And in the detail, I mentioned the style that my dad would have back here, hitting there while my grandfather was seated and taking his time. My dad was actually nose on the canvas going through some of those things, okay? One other huge factor I want you to understand about my dad's work, particularly some of these late phase, my dad had the use of 2 fingers. 2 fingers. From a brain injury that he had early on, he had no use of his left arm whatsoever, and his right hand just about could turn a doorknob. So if you ever shook my father's hand, you'd know right away there's just enough to hold onto a paintbrush. So we weren't at the phase of taping a paintbrush to his hand. He was holding the brush in whatever way he could possibly pick it up. His eyes, he would have a circle with an orange. He'd go, what color is that? And I would write orange in big around. So he would take it, he'd dip the brush in, adjust it in his mouth, and do that. I can't do that with 10 fingers. Couldn't do it. Let alone have the vision, put the colors together. The characteristics, like look at the foot. The guys are just playing there. The foot, the legs crossed, the mood, the wrist. Not to mention his eyes were almost gone. Okay, he could stand this far away. He could walk into a room like this and not even know what that is, and then have to come back and like, oh yeah, that's jazz band. Oh yeah, right? And he did it. So he's producing works barely able to see and barely able to even hold on to a paintbrush, okay? So that takes appreciation for this stuff and just goes, skyrockets it, okay? So, but this one was really cool because it just spilled out. I hadn't seen Dad be that intense and feverish about something, sending me, I need lizard crimson. I need this, I can't, just like very specific colors. So I'd race off and get those and come in and be like, here you go, Dad, and not even a thank you or anything. You just let her squirt it out there and get right back. Wouldn't even know if I came in the room or left. So that was an incredible thing. And as I mentioned earlier, I like being the business end of my father. So I would be out running around taking care of that stuff while he did this. Up until September, it's like all I want in life is for Dad to have the time to do what he does. So, I was quite proud there being that business end, and, as I mentioned now, it's like, I have both hands on the wheel, and I have incredible images to share, so it's, everything is right where it should be, I feel. Any other images? Yes.
Question, where are your grandfather's paintings stored and your dad's? Where's the collection?
Paintings, well, they're on display, Delaware Museum, Biggs Museum, Brandywine River Museum. There's probably several others that I'm probably leaving out. They are National Gay, thank you, Shamika. Yeah, I think that, yeah. It's like National Gallery. Like just fill in the gaps, yeah. Yeah, Biggs, yeah. Last year, yeah, Biggs got it.
How about the barns? Do they have anything up there?
I'm not sure, yeah, there's a lot of paintings around in cold storage, and some of these paintings, like Brainwine River Museum, like they have incredible, like all the wires, it's beautiful. And then you go into their storage area, which is like, if you could imagine a book 40 feet high, where they take a page and do this, and that is 15 or 20 paintings that are just hanging out, that are not in exhibition. I mean, it's incredible what some of these places hold on to. And there's a bunch of Lopers hanging out. The Wyeth and Loper thing was always an interesting dynamic because you had MC and Loper and then Junior, and then the thirds were Jamie Wyeth and me. You're like, oh, you know Jamie Wyeth? No, never met her. Don't know the family at all. But it just so happened that it was like that kind of, it was like a little sequence. Oh, you must know Jamie Wyeth. So there was, yes?
When did he do the self-portrait?
Self-portrait? Self-portrait, I think that's 2015, yeah. So self-portraits were really interesting. I'll just bring this one back out here. Now self-portraits were something that kind of popped off, I'd say about 15 years ago. I'd never seen a self-portrait of my dad. And then he did one, and I was like, oh boy, that's my caller ID on my phone. That is it. When you call, I will see that. No smiles, none of that. Just the man raw, okay? Every single one of his self-portraits says something different. It's the same look. It's the same look. And if I ask him, what do you want to call it, Dad? He'd be like, what you looking at? Oh, okay, well, is there anything better? My eyes on you. Or something like that, something like that. But something very, very intense about those. And every single one of those images are very intense. The background is something that also was kind of a mystery to me for a long time. Like this painting here, it was like, oh, that's self-portrait. But I also understand that this back here is a bridge and an alley from his childhood, from his neighborhood. And that's something I did not know. That wasn't shared with me until he was like, oh, well, that's back there. It's like, well, I didn't know that, So that background sometimes can just be, kind of, scrubbed in there, or it can, have some meaning in the back. In my youth, if I could draw your attention to Gloucester Fleet back here, you see how now, the thing that captured my eye as a kid and what I love so much is, you see the fractured realism in that? Looks like it was glass and it fell over and cracked. Dad used to do his skies like that, so it was completely this fractured. You see how every board in the pier is different, and here and up and down like piano keys? That is the feel and the shape that I fell in love with. That, okay? And that is a scene. I'm actually going to pass this picture around, which is very precious, okay? It's a picture in Rockport, Massachusetts, and you'll see that my dad is painting on a pier, and I'm sitting right at the very foot of his, so I'm in the upper corner there. And you see we're up on the piers. I remember the smell. I remember the seagulls. I remember the smell of his turpentine as he was working there. So we had, yes, the maritime idea for me as a kid was everything. We would go up to Martha's Vineyard for weeks on end and paint there. Rockport, Massachusetts. You want to know why we were up there?
Why?
Because you couldn't really get that done here. My grandfather took his kids up to New England in the 50s. They could walk into bookstores without having problems. They could paint without having problems, or things thrown at them for trying to paint. Hello? Things thrown at them for trying to paint. Okay? So that is why they ended up going to New England so much. My grandfather took students to Quebec City for 65 plus years. Because of things like that. Not because it's gorgeous, because we don't have any problems. You can see a black man teaching white women and not get an egg thrown at you. Plain and simple. Okay? Sad, but plain and simple. So this is what I fell in love with. All right? These fractured ideas. Okay? The water. If my dad was here, he'd give you this. He'd give you that sound effect. Rattlesnake. Because that's, it works through there. picking up, the water, the light underneath here, those boards, like where the light source is coming from. These types of things were so important to him. Light. It can change so many things. It can change a color, it can change a tone. So, and then the work, obviously from up here, it's just like this seam here was just so busy. I look at this and again, I can smell it. I remember the barnacles on the side here. I remember kept grabbing conchs that were down here underneath of the pier. And this was, when we were up there, it was around the time that Jaws was filmed. So a lot of the pictures I have look like they're right out of Jaws. The boats, Menemsha, all those places. So, it was just something that really connected. And this painting is particularly one, that looks awfully good on that wall. It's just one that's really grown on me, because you can see those different phases, and each one really rings true to what his interest was. And I'll swing you over here for a minute, Cape May, another interesting place. Again, we're still working with water and the idea of light coming through. This particular one, I was with him on this day. This was great. This boat had just pulled in. They were pulling these enormous bags of scallops up out of here and onto the table where individuals were sorting them out. I mean, these bags were enormous. And Dad sat there and set up and everything, and he was catching the light, as the light was moving, which is something that's tricky. As the light moves, shadows change. He was able to get that done where he had that light coming off all those little aspects and the drop into the water, it's like he highlighted the things that you care about most. Just the right color, the right accent on the name, the day, the pier, those perspectives, the way that he would sandwich those things in. Many of the paintings, it almost seems like you could step into it, it gives that type of 3D feel. So, but yeah, great painting. Crabs.
He concentrates on those things you care about least.
Well, sure, it could be. It could be, right? We have different eyes, right? You perceive that in a different way. Thank you. Nova Scotia. The other end here. Wherever there was water, Dad was always finding those. This type of scene was big for when we were in Martha's Vineyard, where he'd find a cove of something that was open here that he could be at the top of, and have that whole shape where there was the boats dancing around the side, the buildings up in the hill, and then off into the distance there. But
Jamie, I just want to say something.
Yes.
To everyone that's come to visit the show, Peggy's Cove is the one that stands out with most people that come in and are like, I love that Peggy's Cove. And that's all. That honestly,
Yeah.
it's the one that's really gotten the most attention.
yeah, there's a certain something about it. It's these emphasis on certain things that it's like, that is just what I want to be feeling from this. Okay. So yes.
So did your father's style change through the years, like that fractured style? Was that a period in his
Yes.
life, or did he do that all the way through?
It was. Being self-taught, my dad could kind of change styles. He was like, I'm going to do this kind of like Rob, or I'm going to do this like Picasso. So he could do that quickly, and that was fine. As a kid, I understand he could draw a Mickey Mouse like a whiz. Like anyone would be like, oh, your dad can draw a Mickey Mouse. And it was like, have ice skating, do all these different cartoon type. I'm sorry, what was your question? I'm going to set up on that.
If your father had periods in his life when he
Yes.
changed style.
Yeah, he did have periods, and he would move with the mood. As I mentioned, my grandfather was like, "This is the way I work," and you could see his works change, very dark, and then come up here. So yeah, my dad's work did. For me, it was mainly his physical capabilities. When the eyes started changing, or what color is that?
Yeah.
Those things started changing. If you notice here, there's not a whole lot of scrubbing going on. There's not a whole lot of scrubbing going on. You notice in later paintings that we started getting scrubby. So the articulation in the hands, some of those things. And actually my grandfather started to do that too. He started to take on this very fluffy Renoir type thing. Went from very jagged and almost like gritty in the city. And then it went to this fluffy, very fluffy bushes with this glowing, So whether it was cataracts, whether those things that vision changed, but the idea and the subjects never did change. If my dad was here, take me right back down that Brandywine, or I'll paint this fire escape one more time, or I'll do this one more time. So we have multiple renditions of several of these paintings, and that again is something that tells me it was so true. It was so true. My father came to Paris in 1998 to watch me skate. He was able to hatch out one painting on Pont Neuf. One frantic, looking around every road, everything like this in Paris. Like couldn't stop turning. I can paint here and doing this, and walked into a fence because he's so interested in looking at these different perspectives. And he was so overwhelmed that he was able to get one painting of Pont Neuf. And that painting right now actually is in a U.S. Embassy in Rome.
Oh, wow.
Made into the Art and Embassies program, yeah. So that's been really, really amazing. But yeah, the work definitely changed, but for me it was because of the physical. It was never like the idea, or I'm gonna start going here. And that's again what's so brilliant about that 12th Street Firehouse. That painting let me just go off here for a minute. Right? So again, I mentioned it's like, has this cartoonish type quality, down through here. I mean, look at this wall right here. Look at that piece right there. Look how juicy that is. Look how juicy that is. Colors sitting on top of colors, okay? And that frame. You take the time to look at a couple of these different paintings and you see that there's like a little something different going on. The hand-carved frame. Actually, let's bring that one. That's the last heavy move now. Everybody okay? Am I talking too fast? Am I talk slowly?
I'm not sure.
Anything else you'd like to know about?
I'd like to live that here.
Okay. I'll have you know that there's dozen crabs. For stage right over there, you have dozen crabs in front of you. Stage left, you have Things Catch. Those are all based off of one fish and one crab. One fish put in a bunch of different positions, one crab repositioned in a bunch of different ways. It wasn't an actual bunch. You didn't get that from me. Yeah. Does anyone have a chance to look at the photo? That cute photo? Yeah, I remember that. I remember sitting there listening to turpentine, or smelling turpentine, Dad, wiping the rag off, and right there, got a little sweater around his neck. Like, but that was great. I remember the fishermen coming out and be like, what are you working on? And it's like their boat. And they didn't even recognize it. Where's that boat at? I was like, oh, okay. So it was kind of interesting the way Dad would put something together. Like some paintings you can see what it kind of is. Dad would have stuff all over the place and then go, one line, and then all of a sudden it makes sense. So it was kind of interesting. One other thing is that in individuals that would pass by, children were always able to identify exactly what was going on. Parents are like, what is that? It's like, Mom, can't you tell? It's this right here. It's like, giggle, giggle. Because just something, children's mind is simple and seeing exactly what needs to be there. So this is a carved frame that my dad did. Didn't go to school for this. Actually taught school for this. Okay, at that time there was no one teaching this kind of thing. And the teacher would say, oh, you like carving? You can teach the class. So my dad's in school learning and then teaching within that same time. So this was all done by hand with chisels. He'd sit in the backyard. He'd just take any random piece of wood, barefoot, go out and sit in the yard and say, don't bother me. And then go to work on stuff and produce something like this, And again, we're talking about two individuals that are from Wilmington, Delaware, that hadn't traveled the world. Like, look at some of this stuff. Look at the grapes, that study of design to individuals that might not have been allowed in the library, boom, to even look at images like this, or you had to see them in black and white. My dad didn't get to see color photos in the library or in school until he was almost done school. He's like, wow, color photos. I didn't realize that those had all those colors in it. So you're talking about individuals that were very, very limited on what they had access to and learning, And what do we have? Bunch of grapes. I don't even know in art history where that comes from, right? I mean, just the fish, like just incredible stuff. And this frame has never had a painting in it, okay? And we just display it as that, because what kind of painting would you put in there? Like, what are you going to do, have the frame and the painting fight each other for attention? All right, so it's one of those things that really has to be showcased on its own. And, it's just, my dad just amazed me throughout the things he would do. He built furniture, and he had, as I mentioned, he was a big game hunter and had his rifle collection. And whatever he shot with that animal, he carved into the stock. You know, just like somebody that was always creating and making them his own. You know, like some kids write their name on everything they own. Kevin, that's mine. And my dad, he would document those things and make them in such a way that they were undeniably his. Undeniably his. And that's something that, you know, I also recognize being able to walk into a show and say, oh, there's Dad's painting right away, without even focusing on what else was in the room. That would call out to me. It's in my DNA. Those types of patterns are in my DNA, and I understand them, even though I've never raised a brush to even attempt that. But I understand them, and I watched, and I listened, and I made sure that I took part of I really focused on what the juiciest details of the teaching were. The juiciest, the ones that I could describe to you. You know, the ones that really get the wheels turning, and you start thinking artsy. Not just, oh, I'm walking by paintings, and that's lovely, and taking the time to really examine those things. I've been in the Louvre half a dozen times, and I barely even made it out of, you know, the Roman section. It's like, I'm taking time to stop and look at everything. Whether it catches my eyes and stops me in my tracks, it does not matter. I need to stop, and I need to take appreciation of it. Especially now, all right? I could barely used to walk around and be jaded and be like, Loper art, I'm loving Loper art. But that doesn't mean a damn thing unless I know everything else that I can about art, that I can appreciate other artists, their journey, where they came from, how they did that art. So it's something that, you know, I'll be expanding as I go, and, you know, just continues to bring me tremendous pride. I can't even describe the amount of pride and joy that I have being able to show this off. It's like having the coolest baseball card, just something that brings me such pride to show off. So, you know, I'm really, really happy. I'm really happy for today. I'm happy that you're here, that it's not 100,000 people that I'm having to try to broadcast to. I can look each one of you in the eye and tell you exactly where we've came from and how much that means, and how much it means to be here today, how much it means to drive into this beautiful city, past these beautiful homes, which I didn't even know were here, and I've been wanting to Rehoboth my whole life. Down on the boardwalk, but never back here, okay? So it's wonderful things, and it's the start of something new, and you know, I'm just extremely proud to carry that on, and you know, I have Shamika with me as that team and that support, and Nick and Sarah and this community here has been absolutely incredible, I can't tell you how easy this process was. This can usually be like, oh, rent the U-Haul, and oh, what dates, and oh, am I putting $1 million worth of stuff in it? That was also easier. This organization took such good care of us, it's not even funny. It's not even funny. So, you know, this is something I'll always remember, and, you know, this is, you know, a very, very dear event. Yeah.
We have to collaborate with you in the future.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions? I mean, I'll go on. I mean, you're here. I'll go on. Super Bowl's tomorrow, all right? I'll talk. Yes.
I wanted to know the subject of that.
Yeah. So this one is interesting. It took us a little bit to get the proper location of this. We had to go into photos and, you know, some things like that. Yeah, Nag's Head Pier.
Can you bring it out?
Can you bring it out? I can't.
Sure. Yes.
See it.
Yeah, Nag's Head Pier, Outer Banks. This is a painting that was kind of, it was around, it was like, oh, very nice, good, you know, good perspective and everything. And, yeah, I'm sure that was, yeah, there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick.
It kind of looks like the old Cape Henlopen Pier.
And this, very much like the other pier scenes, like, you know, I could always see Dad walking by that, just walking up to the beach and be like, oh, I know where I'm going. He'd look around to see where you set your towel down, your beach ball, and then he'd take off and go, usually under a pier. I mean, I spent plenty of time under a pier there, again, pulling conchs off there and barnacles and everything. He's knee deep in water, trying to get the underneath of a pier. But it's interesting perspective, yeah? Yeah. I really wish I could tell you more about this. This was a vacation that my dad took, but, you know, I looked at it and I was like, yeah, that's it. You know, some images would be like, oh, that's interesting, Dad. What were you thinking there? But this one was, you know, completely there. Yeah, the way the red outlines is very, very interesting, you know. This painting, I believe, is one that was probably picked at a couple times. My dad would finish a painting, sign it, and look at it for about 8 or 9 years. He'd set it there upside down. Be like, he'd sit in the chair and just like, turn it the other way. Okay, I need red. and then he'd go and fix that. But he was not resting until those things were where they needed to be. And it was just something really interesting. And again, I found that in myself. I can't rest unless those things are the way you want them. You know, it's that final product. It's the last touch you have on it and the first look that somebody puts on it. Are they going to see what it was that you wanted, you know? I think he did a really nice job of pulling the light underneath there, you know, pulling the light through here.
So is the forward part the beach, or is it all water?
Yes, this is on the beach.
This is
Yes,
beach?
yes, this is on the beach,
I see
yeah.
the waves in the back.
Only because I've seen the photograph. Yeah. So, yeah, just interesting. And while my dad was down here, like I mentioned, he wasn't, you know, so welcome on the beach in Rehoboth, but he would go down to Indian River Outlet quite a bit and fish. And I have photos from the mid to late 60s. So he's down in a little VW, you know, just doing his thing. But it was always great how, you know, my dad could go out and I'll just throw a canvas in the car. Wherever we got, just throw a canvas in the car. You know, fishing, nothing's biting. Paint that area. So that painting was always there. It was just such a interesting relief, you know, for him to be able to set that up quickly and to be able to capture something that he saw. He always had a black and white camera on, always a camera hanging there. So where all of that came from, I will never know. I will never know. I'll never know how. This attention to color. And again, he would say, oh, well, his father was an artist. My grandfather wasn't going to share any. He wasn't sharing those stories with him. Right? They're both very serious individuals, and what's yours is yours, and you be your own man over there. Don't come over on mine. Right? Another reason I have so much respect.
When your father was little, did he paint with his father?
Not really. My grandfather was always out and always doing his thing. He was a ladies' man. I was gonna say that. He was out and doing his thing all the time, and the kids, you know, were kind of left to just fend during the day. So the one story that my dad has, or my dad shares with me, my grandfather, is he was sitting there and he got my dad a little stencil kit. He said, go across the street and tell me what color that brick is. And Dad goes over there, and this is the way you do it. That brick's red. Oh, go back and look again. You know, and those, you know, those were the lessons. Those were kind of lessons. It wasn't like, son, come over here. See that turquoise? No, there wasn't any of that. There wasn't any of that. You know, if you could have seen these two interact just in the same room together, you would realize that it's like, yes, they're family, but when it comes to art, you're over there and I'm over here. So it's something that's very, very challenging. Throughout my life, I've had to, since they're, you know, both black individuals with the same name, I've had to make sure that everyone understands that there is a senior and a junior. So that's, you know, something I have to listen for. Oh, WPA projects. Oh, that would be senior. That's something, you know, from the 30s, something very early. So much of my time, and Shamika's time, is making sure that we keep those two artists very separate. They both have their own story. They do cross lines at some point, but it's something that I'm really looking forward to in the future, because that's another entire level of these things. Bring it in as Loper's show is the next level. So we got some work to do.
Great venue for it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah. I got down here in an hour and 12 minutes.
There you go.
All right. Ooh, starting to sweat out. Yeah. Ooh. So so this brings me great joy. Let me just discuss the ace in the back. That was another wild card. As I mentioned, Dad, you know, we can have all these maritime images up. You could be like, oh, Jamie, go ahead and put all those in. But there has to be something that lets you know about the man himself. All right. So this painting is late stage. All right. And you can tell by things that are, you know, we have some things that are magnified. Thank you very much. Magnified. The paint textures are a little bit different. Again, this man can barely see and has two fingers that are working. Okay. So he did a series of these gambler paintings. To be honest with you, this wouldn't have been the first one that I picked. I felt there were some other ones that really captured that moment a little better, but it's my dad's request, and I'll follow that. But this is a scene, as I mentioned, you know, I'd come in and we'd be in the back of a lounge, a little bit of smoke hanging in the air, that one light, the one light over top of the table, okay, I'll make a picture for you. One light over top, and these guys all in there, just, doing their thing. So, that was something that I was connected to as a child. I saw it, and my dad obviously kept returning to. And it was just very interesting how he put some of these together. The magnified hand, some of these things. He would often refer to a lot of things that he learned as a kid, like through stories. He'd be like, "What's bigger, my hand or my face? What's bigger, my hand or my face? Now here." Or put the bottle down and watch the shadow move around the bottle. These are things that weren't explained, but when he discovered them as a kid, was like, whoa! And then he'd show his friends, and it was like so cool. So the discovery, it's one thing for somebody to tell you about perspective, it's another thing for you to completely come across it on your own. And I think that's why it's resonated and been so deep through those years, that those were self-discovered things. There was no one that opened the door and was like, please come in and learn all these things. Here's all the classes and courses you could possibly need. There was none of that. So the launch pad, which was down here, shot them all the way up there. So that conviction, that determination to keep going when they might not have been wanted there, that type of the thing is really, like, the work speaks for itself. The men are what I'm really wanting to impress upon you, and the work that they have there. So you all had a chance to see that photo. Cute photo, right? It's one of the favorite photos of my entire life. Okay? And I brought that down today. I was heading out and I was like, this trip wouldn't be nearly complete without me sharing that photo. Because that sums it all up. That puts me on the scene, sitting right there watching him paint what I celebrate today. So, yeah. So there's so much to share. And on the way down here, I was like, keep it maritime, Jamie. Keep it about the boats, keep it about the gears. Don't go into all that other stuff, but don't do it. Starting to sweat, don't do it, So, there's a ton that I want to share with you, and hopefully I will be back to share more and to be able to talk about those things. But again, I want you all to understand that today was a very, very special day to me. I will not forget any one of the faces that are here. Plain and simple. Okay? So you're now connected to me in that way. We're connected on this event, this day. Okay? It's a beautiful day. You could be doing anything. Okay? But you chose to be here listening to me talk about my father, and I can't tell you how much that means.